Every coffee needs a lotus.
It's nice easing back into old routines, only now with extra care. Let's do it for ourselves, for our loved ones, for everyone's safety.
Hurry up, let's go. Let's go.
And staying safe starts at home.
Nice.
From how we work and learn, to the little ways we find joy. If you must head out, take extra care. Making a small effort, being mindful, they go a long way to keeping us all safe. The health of all depends on each one of us. So let's work together, using new tools and keeping to our new habits to protect the people we love. At work, let's all be good team players.
Hi, morning. How are you? Good.
A little distance between us today will be good for us all tomorrow. A little care can protect the one thing that means the world to us. So let's do our part.
The views and opinions expressed by the speaker, Host, commentator, or other third party in Ariva webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass are those of the speaker, host, commentator, or third party, and do not necessarily reflect and represent the views and opinions of Ariva. Furthermore, Ariva does not warrant, express, or imply the merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose of any product information, service, or process presented by the speaker, host, commentator, or third party, and Ariva specifically disclaims any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or usefulness of any product information, service, or process presented. Finally, material or information presentation, opinion, process, or service by, on any trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise during Ariva webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass do not constitute or imply Ariva's endorsement or recommendation of such opinion, process, service, item, or organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ariva Academy's free live webinar. And our topic this afternoon is behavioral-based interviewing skills. Hire the right people with the right skills for the right position. I'm Kate, and I will be with you this whole afternoon as your host. I'm really excited to be with everyone so that we can learn from our speaker. Now, before we get to know our speaker, I have a few reminders to make sure that our program will run smoothly the whole afternoon. Ariva is committed to protecting your privacy, hence stricter security of this webinar has been implemented. For better viewing of your Zoom experience, we encourage you to please update your Zoom application by visiting their website. And for those of you who are using their mobile data to view this webinar, you can go to either the Google Play Store or the Apple Store so you can download and install the Zoom app. Who is joining an Ariva Academy webinar for the first time? If it's your first time, can you type hi here in the chat box? Also, let us know where you are located right now. Because I was informed we have a lot of participants who are viewing us from out of Metro Manila. I'm here in Parañaque City. We're having a very beautiful sunny afternoon. I hope wherever you are, you're having good weather also. We have friends who are out of town from Agusan del Norte, from Bacolod, from Bataan, Batangas, from Bicol, Cagayan de Oro, from Cebu, General Santos City, Iligan City, from Iloilo, from Laguna, from Leyte, from Isabela, from Palawan, Pampanga, Pangasinan, Puerto Galera, Puerto Princesa, from Quezon Province, also from Sorsogon, that's in Bicol, South Cotabato, from Surigao, from Tuguegarao, from Zambales, from Zamboanga City, from Zamboanga del Sur. Wow, that's Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. We have representatives. Hello, Philippines. Good afternoon. And aside from that, we also have viewers from out of the Philippines. We have from UAE, from Qatar, from Malaysia, from Singapore. Wow. Hello, Philippines. Hello, world. We are very happy to have you here with us. Welcome to Ariva Academy Philippines. And for those of you who've attended in the past, welcome back. We are very happy to have you here again with us. Now, let us do an audio check. I want to make sure that once our speaker is online and on screen, you will be able to hear her loud and clear. So type 111 if you can hear me clearly. You can also type 222 if you can't hear anything. You can type 2121 if you can hear me, but the sound that you're hearing is laggy, it's breaking up, or I sound choppy. Or type question mark if you don't understand what is happening. We'll try to help you out. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 2121s, several 111s. For those of you who are having trouble with their audio, please make sure you have someone to check the audio of your gadget. We really don't want you to miss any part of the discussion. I'm seeing some 111s, okay, as well. So again, before our speaker goes on screen, please have your audios checked. You might need an earphone or you just have to adjust the audio of your gadget, okay? Thank you for your feedback. Later, we'll have a break time, and then I'll be announcing that because something exciting will happen during that break time. So watch out for that. Participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by our administrator during the discussion to avoid interruptions. But for those of you who might have questions, we'll allot a Q&A portion. During that time, you can click the raise hand button, and then we'll allow you to unmute and ask your question directly to our speaker. Or you can also type your questions here in the chat box, and then I will be reading them during the Q&A portion. An e-certificate of attendance will be awarded to participants who will successfully complete the entire virtual masterclass. And as proof of your attendance, we would like to ask everyone to make sure that your cameras are turned on all throughout our session, okay? Keep your cameras turned on all throughout our session. We really want to be able to interact with you. We want to be able to see the beautiful faces of our participants. Okay, so online certificates will be available 3 to 5 working days after the learning session. Please help us build and improve our service with your comments and your feedback. You can scan this QR code and that will bring you instantly to the feedback form. At the end of our session, please fill out the form and then send it back to us. We will greatly appreciate your feedback. There you go. Now I'm sure you're all excited to get to know our speaker. So let me introduce her. This afternoon's speaker has more than 20 years of experience in training, consulting, communication, and human resources. Her passion is people development and writing. She is a trainer, a consultant, a teacher, course designer, and writer. She designs and conducts both in-person and virtual training programs in communication and customer service. She has also conducted leadership and management programs. She helped organizations in reviewing their policies, procedures, job description, and training needs, and revising their manuals. She worked with top management and recruitment in improving their recruitment process. Her clients include organizations across the private and public sector. These are local and global organizations in varied industries. Before going into training and consulting, she was an editor-writer. As a technical writer, she worked with scientists and engineers in producing papers and reports. She authored books on conversational English and speed reading and wrote articles for publishing houses. Our speaker has solid experience in the academe. She has taught all levels and trained educators. She's a believer of continuous learning. So everyone, let's welcome our speaker, Ms. Jeline Santa Maria.
Thank you, Ms. Kate, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to share my screen, so give me time to do that.
Yes, Yumi, we're excited to listen to you, Ms. Janine.
Thank you, Miss Kate. I'm excited to learn with everyone. There. A few seconds. Let me see. Okay, are you able to see the screen? There is something over here.
I think there's something covering your presentation, Ms.
Right,
Janine.
right. Let me see what happened. All right. Is that okay?
That is better.
Yes. Oh. People are not your most important asset. Don't get shocked. The right people are. And this is a quote from Jim Collins, the author of From Good to Great. Would you like to hire the right people? Definitely everyone does. And that is why we are here. We want to hire right. We want to hire smart. And that is the reason for us to be together this afternoon. Let's maximize our learning session by putting ourselves in a learning mode in order for us to cover these topics. And the learning mode will mean 1, ask questions, 2, share insights, and 3, know how to apply what you have learned. I'd like to focus first on what researchers have mentioned, and this is how costly hiring the bad hires in organizations. Very expensive. Researchers have different amounts, have different views, and even the US Department of Labor said about 30% of the salary of the new hire would be cost if that new hire is a bad hire. And you know, it goes beyond cash. There are many direct and indirect costs of a bad hire. And I'm sure that you can relate not only to one, but to several of these. It affects work, it affects the team, it affects results, and it affects our clients. The question now is, what caused bad hiring decisions? Feel free to share in chat. I'm sure there are many, and I'm sure that we would like to share the common ones. So feel free to share in chat. Politics in the office, palakasan, rushing out to complete manpower. Thank you. There are many more. And number one is really, we're pressured to hire. You know, we want that person yesterday. So it's very difficult. And sometimes we're just pressured to hire who is around. So it's important that we're able to have a process that will make us hire right. Politics, so leadership. I am really excited to find out more about it, but we just have for now to see it as is. And sometimes also, there are vague questions that are asked or vague requirements given by the hiring or line manager. So many reasons. Sometimes HR would say it is the selection process, right? So with these reasons, I know that we'd like to cover so much, but for this afternoon, let's just focus on interviews. There are many interview challenges, right? And one of which is what we call improper interviewing type. There are many kinds of interviews. There is what we call a case study panel interview for the top. They're given a case and they are interviewed in terms of how they analyze the case. There is also a panel interview. Several managers plus HR will be in that panel interview. There is also a group interview, and this one is used by certain manufacturing companies. Like I had a client wherein they would have 10 to 20 candidates sit down in one room, and there will be a question thrown to this group of candidates. From there, they narrow down the number of potential candidates, and they call that the group interview. There is also stress interview, which I find that now it is seldom used. So it can be used in very specific situations that will require seeing how candidates handle stress. And definitely, there are still unstructured interviews around, but the ideal is to have structured interviews. Another interview challenge is what we call the types of questions asked. Write down a question in your iPad, in your notebook, on a piece of paper that you usually ask when you conduct interviews. I can also check chat for questions that you usually ask. Now I see why should we hire you. Thank you. That's from Jazz. Tell me about yourself. Very common. Jolene. And one more. May I see? Strengths and weaknesses, and there are more. Okay, so you have written down a question or two or even three. This is what we're going to do. Let's see if these questions are part of what will follow. Tell me about yourself. We can relate to this, and this is called an icebreaker question. Why? Because it is meant to de-stress the candidate. We want the candidate to just speak freely for the first minute or first few minutes. That is why it is called an icebreaker question. We also have strengths and weaknesses, and that is part of the next slide. This is a self-assessment question. Another common question related to that is when we ask our candidates to rank themselves. Another one is the hypothetical question. So you put the candidate in a situation, in a scenario that is work-related, and you ask, what would you do? And we also have some leading questions. We do not want to lead our candidates to the answers that we expect them to give, but sometimes we ask questions that lead to them. And that means when we say, do you have good writing skills? Of course, the candidate will say yes, especially when our position requires report writing. Or why are you applying with us? Is it for the compensation package? And usually the candidate will say, oh, it is really for professional development and growth, right? So the question is, all right, we have all these questions. What is our reason for asking these questions? And what are we going to do to help us assess the answers to these questions and determine the right hire. Let's wait for that part. But think about that. Reflect on these questions that you usually ask. The portion of an interviewer is 30%. 70% should be given to the candidate. Let the candidate talk. Let the candidate tell his story. So that's 70-30%. As interviewers, let us not dominate the interview. And the last challenge that I want to include for this learning session is biases. It is human nature. We have our preferences. We have our inclinations. We hear that somebody is a graduate of this school, or this person is from this top company. Then our preference is for these candidates that may be considered bias, which is affected by our upbringing, our culture, and many more. Are we able to relate to this? Yes? Or what about this? Sometimes it is not us, but we hear certain people who say, I know right away. First few seconds, I know. So when we talk of biases, let us focus on these. Take note of them because we will need them in the succeeding slides. It's a quick drill, all right? I'll give you time to take note of this. Are you ready? All right, so let's have this. He's like me when I was starting, driven, ambitious. He'll be a good team lead. What bias is this? Type in chat. Among the ones I see similar to me. All right, let's move on to the next. Yes, similar to me is correct. She shook my hand firmly. She has presence. She's the one. I found my candidate. First impression. No, you feel good. Just the first few seconds, just the handshake or the smile. Let's try the third one. What bias is this? She isn't fit. This is judging the candidate because the school where this candidate graduated from is not part of the top 5. Okay, yes, that is discrimination. And this is what we call the horn effect. It is judging right away based on that information, seeing this characteristic that unfortunately the interviewer does not like, right? So that is the horn effect. And what about this? He worked in one of the best companies. Halo, yes, the opposite now of horn. And the last one, this is confirmation bias. I asked a second question. She answered confidently. I need not ask anymore. A small moment of observation and the judgment is there. It's the tendency for some interviewers to search for, interpret, prioritize information that validates the belief of the interviewer. So what does that mean? The interviewer has to really spend time assessing rather than confirming. As an interviewer, what do we look for? Two things that we look for. And what are these? Number one, we'd like to find out the technical competence of our candidate, the knowledge and the skills. And the second is job fit. There are two questions I want you to take note of. Technical competence. Can the candidate do the job well? Can. Job fit. Will the candidate do the job well? Given those guide questions, let us now see the iceberg model to represent both technical competencies and behavioral competencies related to job fit. When we look for technical competencies, they're easier to spot. Knowledge, skills, capabilities, they are necessary, yes, but we don't only hire for technical competence. Don't forget, these are what we call the traits, the attitudes, the values of the candidate, very difficult to determine, especially in an interview. They are deeply rooted. We do not see them right away, but very important because they can tell us who are the high performers versus the low performers. They can tell us whether the candidates have the traits that we're looking for given the position and given the culture of the company. I'd like to emphasize that it is not only position, but also the culture, the team culture that is aligned with the company culture. Because our experience is, here is a very skilled, knowledgeable, intelligent candidate that cannot last in the company because of the team chemistry, right? So we really have to be very focused on both technical and behavioral competencies. I mentioned high job performers and low job performers. As interviewers, both recruiters, from HR, our line and hiring managers, we really want to be able to predict job performance. You can see here the different predictors, and you can see opposite predictors, the percentages, meaning that if you look at the first predictor, work experience, that is considered based on the research of Frank Schmidt and John Hunter, that is only 3%, right? So you can see everything there. Now, look at the table. And one of the things that I want you to take away from this table is a combination of different assessment techniques is better than a single one. I'm sure that when you conduct your selection process, you have several ways of predicting job performance. So that is a combination of assessment techniques. Another thing that I'd like you to take away from the table, look at unstructured interview compared to structured interview. So unstructured interview is only 14% in terms of predicting job performance, and a structured interview is higher, that's 26%. My dear participants, can you type in chat? If you have a structured interview, type the number 1. If you are using a structured interview, may I see the 1? Is it coming? Coming? Yes, 1. There is. Yes, few. Now there are more. Thank you for that. Later, let us see if we have a common understanding of what a structured interview is. All right. Now let me show you another table. And this one is related to the type of question and the interview time devoted to the type of question, considering traditional versus behavioral interview. So in a traditional interview, notice that the most time is devoted to questions asking opinions and situations, or what we call the hypothetical questions. What would you do given a scenario? That is 48%. And that is followed by 32% getting information about work experience. In the behavioral interviews, experience is also very high. In fact, it's the highest, 40%. And notice that behavioral questions are asked more than the opinions and situations. So very interesting, right? Very interesting. And that is the reason for focusing on behavioral interviews. Yes, this is what we're going to focus on. Again, some will say, with my decades of interview experience as a recruiter, as an HR manager, I would know. I can feel in my gut. I can feel it. Maybe true for some, but not for everyone, correct? So what does that mean? Organizations nowadays do not want people to rely on gut feel. They do not want people to just hope for the best and rely on luck. That can be too expensive for the organization. So it is better to have a systematic process. Oh yes, you have a recruitment process in place that is systematic. You also want to put your interview process in a way that it is systematic. It's repeatable. Let's just be on the same page. When I say systematic approach in conducting interviews, the process is consistent whoever does the interview. It is somebody from HR. It is the sales manager who's going to conduct the final interview. Both of them will use the same process. They have the same standards. And when I say standards, the same questions formulated in a structure that is similar. And the responses, or what we call the benchmark responses to the questions, so that they can be evaluated fairly, are there set as standards. And the rating is also considered part of the standard. Given that these are standards that are documented, remember, they should be documented, then the process is repeatable from one candidate to another, from one interviewer to another. The moment you will involve other managers in conducting interviews, the moment one busy hiring manager says, I can have my supervisor conduct the interview, there is a set of standards. And HR will also use the same standard. In fact, HR, you play a key role because you want to make sure that these standards you will be able to transfer to those who may be new in HR, new in interviewing. You conduct an orientation, you conduct a learning session on your own internally for everyone to be oriented as to how to ask the questions, how to rate the candidates. That is systematic. A behavioral interview is systematic. When we talk of a behavioral interview, it is based on a principle that is a result of years and years and 85 years of so many researches because of the predictive nature of the research. And the principle is simply past behavior tends to predict future behavior. However, this candidate behaved in the past will be how he will behave in the position he is applying for. But please take note of the word tends, because this is not a perfect approach. And you have to wait. Why? You have to know what could be the pitfalls of this behavioral interview. Meanwhile, let us be on the common page and understand what it is. So it is planned, it is systematic, there is a structure, and the questions are arranged in a sequence. They are documented. Other companies, they do not want their interviewers to be confined to several questions and sound robotic. They have what they call a question bank. Right? Later, let's dwell on a question bank when we go to structuring behavioral interview questions. And when we prepare questions, they should be matched to the position. When we prepare questions, questions will help us determine if our candidates are behaving the behaviors we expect them to behave. Let's go now to the steps. 5 simple steps. You look at them, they look simple, but when they are done, they can be very challenging. I've had the experience of sitting down with certain companies who do not have a structured interview, and they are growing. They want to come up with a structured interview, and they want to have a behavioral interview. It really took a lot of time. I will go through each step. What I want to mention first is this number 1, which is identifying behavioral competencies. You have them, and if you have them, you don't reinvent. Use these behavioral competencies because these are what you expect from the candidate given certain positions. Now, if these are not clearly defined, that is the challenge, that is workable. In this crewing company, what we did was to really have a workshop. The workshop started with top management because it's a crewing company. Their clients are the principals in Europe. So we had to fly in 2 principals, and together we worked on the behavioral competencies for ship captain, for the ratings meaning the seafarers, and chief engineer. We started with those 3 positions. And it was really difficult because each executive would have a perspective on the behavioral competencies. So related to that, let's start now with some examples of the behavioral competencies or traits that we are looking for in specific positions. These are dependent on position, on your company, and with one organization, they have even gone beyond this. They have come up with a list of questions, not only for competencies, but for the core values. Imagine that. Because to them, that's the foundation, and that will help them determine if their candidates will be able to adjust to the culture of the organization. right? So these are some. Let me give you another set. Do you find some of your behavioral competencies or traits in these two tables? Yes? Time management is very common. Leadership, interpersonal skills, communication, motivation, risk-taking, very common. Okay, we don't stop there. We just do not identify, okay, for the position of software developer, I need the following. I have 5 traits. This is another challenging part of the first step. You need to define the task of that particular trait, because without a description of the task, it will be difficult to design questions and to rate. How will I rate resourcefulness? There are so many ways to do that. So we go back to what is the task expected of that candidate in the given position. I'm just giving you 2 examples here, one for resourcefulness and one for customer service. So that means both HR as well as the hiring manager will really work together in order to do this. That was what we did in this crewing company. We had the HR vice president. All the departments of the company were represented by the executives in order for them to agree on 1, the traits, and 2, the task, right? Define the task. So given this, let us now look at how we are going to design the questions. They are open-ended questions. Yes, this is not new to you. I will say the word, they are STAR questions, STAR. So it rings a bell, right? It's not new. The behavioral questions use the STAR. S is for situation wherein you will ask the candidate for a situation in the past, for a problem in the past that he or she encountered, that he or she solved. And you will have to find out what the candidate did. So that's the task. After that, you have to get details of the action, right? Details are important in the response of our candidate. And don't forget, you want to determine the results because the candidate has done this action. What is the result? So that is the STAR formula for a behavioral question. Would you say that you have interview questions in the company using STAR? May I see? Just write there STAR or yes. Okay, great. You have. For those of you who have the STAR questions, that's very good. So that means you have something in place. So we can check later on when I show you examples. Is that what you have? Okay, I even see an icon of a star there. So let's look at some examples of a STAR question, which is a behavioral question. And when you look at the behavioral question like this one, it's, not a question, but it is a statement, correct? It is a statement that says, tell me about a time. It's a statement. It's not a question. And one thing that you need to remember is when you design a STAR question, you have to avoid a leading word, a leading phrase. You have to avoid giving away the answer. because I'm sure that your candidates are ready, they're intelligent, they have prepared, they have gone through a lot of interview references, interview questions, they have practiced, right? So they know the STAR question and they have rehearsed the STAR question. So again, make sure that you're very careful, and that is what I want you to do after the learning session. I'd like you to revisit the STAR questions that you have so that you can see if there are some that give away the answer and you can revise the question. Well, Jeline, I can always ask, what do you do when you have many tasks on your plate? Oh, yes, you can ask the question. It is also an open-ended question. But remember, go back to past behavior tends to predict future behavior. So when I ask, what do you do when you have so many tasks on your plate? That is not something in the past. It can be answered theoretically. It can be answered hypothetically. Look at the A, that's action. How did you deal with the situation? And R, for results, what happened in the end? Two things. I usually hold the question up to ST. When I ask the question, I do not rattle off everything. For one, as interviewers, we know that we avoid confusing our candidate with multiple questions, correct? Now, second, if I right away ask, how did you deal with the situation? I'm already leading the candidate. So I want to find out how you dealt with the situation. So you can hold that. You can ask these questions to probe, right? Probe, and just focus on their story. When you ask, tell me about a time when you face competing priorities. The story is important. The details of the story, those are the things that you take note of, because from there, it will be difficult for the candidate to mask their motivation and to hide whatever things happen. You'll find that somewhere, some way. So let them tell the story. There's also one expert in interviewing who said, I don't say, tell me about a time. I introduce the word, could you tell me? And the reason is this. A candidate sometimes feels anxious, especially when it's tell me about a time, because it's so direct and it's like, telling, unlike when it's, could you tell me? It's like giving the candidate control. And when the candidate is more relaxed, then the candidate will be able to tell the story better with many details. So I'm giving you some tips. Here is another STAR question, right? You can see from here, the action and the results can be for probing. But let me share with you more tips, because you see, when you have the behavioral competency or trait and you have defined it, it will be easier for you to come up with a STAR question. Am I right? Because there's a formula. So what I want you to do is, after coming up with a question, or now that you have a STAR question in the company, go back and find out, are there words that lead the candidate to give the expected answers? What are examples of these words? Watch out for one, adapted. Another is the word successfully. So the candidate knows you're looking for a win. The third one is balanced. And the fourth one is persuade or persuaded in the past. Okay, so note down these words and see if these are present in the STAR or behavioral question. How will you improve the original question? How will you improve this? What are you going to do? Because you do not want to divulge the correct answer or what you expect, I would say. What is the clue? And because that is the clue, you will take it out, right? You don't need that. What is that question or what is that word? It is adapted. You are right. Okay. Look. Drop it and just have this question. Let us have another. How would you improve this? What part there is questionable? All right, remove more interesting because we are already queuing the candidate, right? To give us that answer that made the job more interesting. Yes. So drop it and then find out, was there ever a time when he was bored on the job? That is one tip that you should remember. Let us also make questions tough. When I say tough, that means, all right, it's a STAR question, but you just have to add a condition to make it more challenging. Let me show you. You can find this in many references, right? And this is something common. This is something that hiring managers and recruiters would like to find out. Now, what do? How do we make it tougher? Let me show you. We added a condition. The condition, much of which was initiated by the top. Okay, good. Yes, it's either you remove resources like people and tools and budget, or top management or management, or you add. That's the technique. Let's have another example. How do you make it more challenging? By adding a condition and removing the word successful. Give me an example of an important goal that you set so you don't have any more successful in spite of not having the budget that you need. Okay, so what do you have now so far? You have the formula for behavioral questions, STAR. And second, you know what words, what phrases to avoid. And you also have a tip on how to make that STAR question challenging by adding conditions. Let us proceed. We have preparing for interviews. Interview probes. Yes. So when we talk of interview probes, what are they? When do you probe? May I see in chat? Can you show us some reasons why you need to probe? Let me see. Why do you probe? Is there a set of probing questions that you have in your structured interview? True. You have to get more facts. You have to understand their response. When you say that the details are not given or the details are inadequate, then you probe. You want to clarify, right? That is what you do. It's a follow-up because you want to get more information. You want to validate. Yes, yes. I go back to the star and I said, all right, if you are going to prove, then you can move on to the questions related to action, related to results. And you can see some questions here that follow up the behavioral question given, right? Now, another example. What was the first thing that you did? Let us say, well, the candidate has described and it was not so organized. So what do? You have to help the candidate in terms of, all right, what was the first thing that you did? You're trying to put everything in sequence so that you're able to understand better. Why? Because you want to assess the candidates, as what Rosalie mentioned in our chat box. Now, at times, the response is, this was what we did. You know, the deadline was tomorrow and we're just halfway. So this was what we did. Bro, find out, what did you do yourself? Because when the candidate says we, that could mean the candidate and the manager or the whole team. You are interviewing the candidate, not the whole team, not the manager. So you have to understand, what did you do yourself? What did you do as part of the team? And that is the reason for saying that when we evaluate, when we assess, we have to watch out for the language of our candidates. We'll have more on assessment when we move on toward the end of the learning session. Now we move to the next step, which is benchmark answers. Oh, another tough thing to do, benchmark answers. My goodness, why? Because every time you have your star question, your behavioral question, remember that you need to have responses. We cannot have a response that will be assessed in different ways by different interviewers. So there should be a common standard, and that is what we call the benchmark response. I'll have more about benchmark response after our 5-minute break.
Thank you so much, Miss Jeline. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm back. That means we're going on our break. I mentioned a while ago that we're doing something exciting during our break time. I have some announcements later, but right now we're doing something exciting because right now Ariva is in the mood to give prizes to 2 lucky participants. So we're going to play a game, and the game is called Guess the Movie. So if you've attended in the past, you might be familiar with this, but for those who are joining us for the first time, this is how the game goes. We will be short clips or short trailers of a particular movie. Now, what you have to do, you have to be the first one to type the complete and correct title of that movie here in the chat box. Okay, if you're the first one to get that right, you will receive 200 pesos that will be sent straight to your GCash account. That is exciting, right? 200 pesos richer at the end of attending a free live webinar. Wow. Okay, for you guys to get the feel of the game, let's do a trial run. No prize for this one yet, but I want you to start guessing the title of this movie.
Faces.
We have an indigenous population called the Navi. They are very hard to kill. This is why we're here. Because this little gray rock sells for 20 million a kilo. Their village happens to be resting on the richest deposit, and they need to relocate. Those savages are threatening our whole operation.
There we go. Okay, the chat box is moving too fast. Let me go back. The answers I'm seeing are Avatar, Avatar, The Way of the Water, Avatar 1. I am also seeing Avatar. What are the other answers? The Avatar. The Avatar. Avatar Part 1. Avatar, the series. Avatar, The Way of Water. Avatar 2, Way of the Water. Avatar Fallen Kingdom. Let us reveal what is the real title of that movie. It is Avatar, just that Avatar. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of answers in the chat box, but I've mentioned this is just a trial run. Just to remind everyone, it has to be the complete and correct title, okay? And we will not be accepting typos for this one. So this next clip might give you 200 pesos if you are the fastest typer here. Let's watch this next clip.
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. So when we needed them, they could fight the battles that we never could.
There you go. Very fast in typing again. Let me check the answer. We have the Avengers, Avengers Endgame, just Avengers. We also have John Wick. We have Avenger. Okay, so that's different. We have Avengers, we have Avenger, we have the Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron. What are the other answers? There you go. So let us see. Do we have our first winner? What is the title of that movie? It is, yes, The Avengers. And the first one who's really, really fast. After a few seconds, he got it correct. He's the first one to type it. We have Christopher Eleazar. Congratulations, Christopher. You will receive 200 pesos from Ariva Academy. Now, Christopher, this is what you have to do. Please send your GCash account number to Ariva Academy Philippines here in the chat box. Look for Ariva Academy Philippines. Send the GCash account number privately, please, okay? Don't send it to everyone. We don't want to compromise your data. Again, send that and then expect your prize in a little while. Now, Christopher, because you've won already, you won't be able to join the game anymore so that your other co-participants will have a chance in getting the last 200 pesos that we're giving away this afternoon. So, everyone, let's watch this next clip. Okay, the chat box is moving so fast. Okay. I think everyone has seen that movie at least once in their life. Let me see the answers. We have Titanic, Titanic. We have Guardians of the Galaxy. We have The Little Mermaid. Are you sure you're watching the same film as we are? What are the other answers I'm seeing? So far, I'm seeing a lot of Titanic. We have there, Titanic. Is that the right answer? Yes, of course, that is the right answer. So congratulations, Diane, Emerald, and Lumiere. Congratulations. You are our last winner, and just like Christopher, you will also receive 200 pesos. So this is what you have to do, Diane. Send your GCash account number privately to Ariva Academy Philippines here in the chat box and expect your prize in a little while. So Christopher and Diane will have extra for coffee at the end of our session this afternoon. Congratulations, our winners, and thank you to everyone who joined the game. I'm sure you all enjoyed this game. Congratulations. So join us again in our next learning events for you to get a chance also in winning GCash from us. Okay, now I'll be moving on to my other announcements. So thank you again. Congratulations to all our winners. Okay. Stay on top of our insights and updates. Stay connected with the Ariva Academy. You can join the Ariva Academy's Facebook group. You can also like Ariva Academy's Facebook page. You can follow us in LinkedIn and also check out our website, www.ariva.com.ph. Now, I'm inviting everyone to be a part of the growing Ariva Academy Viber community. You can scan this QR code and that will bring you instantly inside our Viber community. So we are very excited to see you there. Now, for those of you who might have missed the free live webinars that we've had starting 2020, so that means we really have a lot of them already, you can subscribe to our YouTube channels, Ariva Academy and Ariva Talks, so that you can watch all of them. Now, I'd like to invite you to some of our upcoming learning events. I'm sorry. Okay, for those of you who are interested in inviting our speakers to conduct an in-house program, you can give us a call or send us an email and let us know what program you have in mind. Okay, I will show you the list of the programs later. But for now, here are some of the upcoming learning events that we have. Tomorrow, we have another free live webinar that will happen tomorrow afternoon. We have this topic, how to develop your emotional intelligence for effective working relationships. Another free live webinar will be on June 6th, Psychology of Persuasion and Influencing Skills. How to influence and persuade at work. This will be really helpful and useful for all of our participants here today. This will be on June 6th. Again, it's another free live webinar from Ariva Academy. On June 7th, we have this topic, excellent Japanese HR practices that can be applied in any workplace environment. I'm sure we have a lot of HR practitioners here with us this afternoon, so you might be interested in joining us for this free live webinar on June 7. On June 9, we have another masterclass with the topic Managing and Leading Remote and Hybrid Workforce, Maximizing Efficiency and Performance in Today's Dynamic Business. Innovative talent acquisition strategies to retain top talent will be the topic of June 9. On June 14, we have professional telephone etiquette at workplaces matter. Effective purchasing strategies and negotiation tactics, that will be the topic on June 15. On June 16, we have the 7th Bookkeeping Essentials, Accounting 101 and Bookkeeping Basics, Job Structure and Compensation Program, How to Design and Develop a Competitive Salary Structure. This is our topic on June 21. On June 23, we have Strengthening Paralegal Skills, Business Contract Law for Non-Legal Professionals. On June 28, we have the 10th Effective Administration of Salary and Payroll Law. I mentioned a while ago that I will be showing you the programs that we have for in-house. Here are some of the programs that we offer. So just let us know what topic you have in mind. We have a lot more than this, okay? Let us know what you need and we'll help you partner with the right speaker under Ariva Academy Speakers Bureau for that. There you have it. Now, I won't be taking much of your time anymore. I know we still have a lot to discuss this afternoon. So I'm giving the floor back to Miss Jeline. You're on mute, Miss Jeline. Okay. There you go.
Am I okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Thank you. Miss Kate, I will not be richer by 200. I cannot guess the movies.
You're not familiar with those movies, Miss Jeline?
Only Titanic.
Only Titanic. So probably this weekend you can watch those movies.
I will. Okay. Let me just ask you, and please type in the chat box, what's one key learning? One key learning, more of a light bulb moment that you had before we had our break. I will just check the chat box. Okay, structured. For others, it's star. Yes. Oh my. Star is winning. Well, that's good because after the learning session, then you can start working on your star questions. All right. I was describing benchmark answers. We have a question bank. We have a structured interview wherein we see there the traits that we want to evaluate, the corresponding questions that we need to ask. So the next thing that should be part of that structure is the benchmark answers. And that means you must have what we call the good answer and the bad answer in order to help the interviewers know how to rate the candidate. From my experience, this one is really the most difficult. It is time consuming as well, but it is something that will help us in assessing candidates fairly. Later, I'll show you one example because I want to marry it with rating, all right? So the benchmark answers. Now, there are answers in previous interviews that you have compiled and you know that these are the good answers. You can start from those. You can have in your committee, you have a set of answers and you can share these answers. These are the good answers. You can also share the bad answers because they will help you come up with that benchmark of responses. I'd like now to go into the rating scale. Right? So with rating scale, I'd like to describe how you will evaluate responses, what are the principles of evaluation, how are you going to make sure that the responses are good answers and you can evaluate them fairly. So let us start with what is called the fake star. If there is a star question, there is a fake star. What is a fake star? It describes the answer of the candidate. And this is the answer that will tell you, oh, he or she does not have the trait, the competency that the company is looking for. So this is what we call fake stars. Fake stars will include, and this is how you will know, it's a response wherein it's just an outpour of feelings. I'll give you example later. It's an outpour of feeling and nothing else. So you cannot see the story that happened that will prove he behaved that trait in the past. Theoretical or future-oriented answers. In my interviews, I notice this as very common. The candidate will give a response, but the response describes what the candidate will do rather than what the candidate did. And remember, it's past behavior. Therefore, it should be in the past tense. And in the probing, you also have to clarify, because some recruiters told me, what if there are lapses in the grammar? So how will I determine?
Miss Jeline, excuse me.
Yes.
Are we sharing a slide for this? Because we are not seeing one yet.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. There. Just wanted to remind you.
Okay. Let me just share.
Okay.
All right, let me see. Let me just move it. I will go back to this slide right there. And translate it into okay, I'm starting to share. Just tell me if you're able to see it.
There, we can see it now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll go back to the benchmark answers. I only have one slide for that. Let me show you the slide where I mentioned that we have to be ready with the benchmark answers, meaning there are good answers for the behavioral question that we have, and there are bad answers. Because if all of these are documented in that structured interview form, then we will be able to help all interviewers, the ones who interview in HR and the hiring or line managers, to be able to rate fairly. Okay, and there will be consistency in the rating of these answers. Now, in the next slide, you will see the last step, and this is developing a rating scale. Now, before we go into the rating scale, I described what we call fake stars, and these are responses wherein you will not be able to evaluate the applicant's past behavior. The responses are not clear, and at the same time, you will be able to see only, say, an expression of a feeling, no details, no story, a theoretical or future-oriented answer. I mentioned that very common in my past interviews. I would always hear candidates describe the situation in the future, like this is what I'm going to do, or this is how customer service is done, this is how delighting the customer is done. It's theoretical. There are vague answers, definitely, and there is also a generic description. Let me focus on one question. Let us just say you are asking about a situation in handling an irate client. The answer of the candidate is something like this: I felt bad for the client. That is an expression of feeling, and all the rest, it's just saying how he empathizes, how he understands. It's just an expression of feelings rather than the handling of the irate client. So watch out for this. It's a fake star. When a candidate says, oh, this irate client that I had, I really went out of my way to help this client, but cannot provide the details of how the client has been helped. Again, a fake star. It's a vague response. Of course, if it is vague, I'm sure, as some of you mentioned, you will probe. With the same question, the answer is, I treat the customer as king. But what did the candidate do? How did the candidate treat the customer as king? Okay, so again, that is an example of a theoretical answer. If the answer is, if I will have an irate client, then this is what I am going to do. First, I am going to simply listen. Now, nothing wrong with the answer, but that is a future-oriented answer. A generic answer is introduced by lines like, what I usually do is. It is not a past behavior. Again, watch for the past behavior. Assess, was that a past behavior, or just giving me an example of how to handle an irate client, right? So fake stars, watch for that. Now, another thing, recognize fluff and fiction. I do not want to call this a lie, but I just want to call it fluff and fiction. It is so difficult to get the details of the story. You know that when the candidate experienced it, that's vivid in the mind and could really be very detailed. That means you have to listen for the details, and approving will mean you have to ask for the details. Again, mentioned in the chat box. Another thing, during the interaction, there will be nonverbal cues that you watch out as well, correct? You will see the facial expression, you'll see the gestures, you will listen to the tone of the voice, you will detect the hesitation, the stammering, but do not isolate one behavior and say, oh, that's fiction. No, I always remind interviewers, you have to see the whole thing. You have to see all those cues before you judge. So notice there can be inconsistency as well in the responses. You're not limited to one or two questions. There are other questions that you will ask. I'm sure you take note, and you're very good in taking notes of responses because that is a must. You also take note of behavioral observations. So that means, given your notes, when you go back to be able to evaluate, you will see whether there are gaps and there are inconsistencies. Watch out for this. And I have described what we call vague, hypothetical, or textbook responses. There are positive signals, right? What are the positive signals? Number one, and you can take note of this, the response is in the first person. I, me, my. It is in the first person. Why? Because the candidate is describing his experience. That's his story, not his boss, not his team member, not his peer. Second, it is in the past tense. Even in, let us say, Tagalog, there is still the past tense, and you can determine. And you can even check, clarify. Was that also the same situation that happened 2 months ago when that you mentioned? Okay. Another thing that you have to look for is the emotion. And the emotion through the words used, positive words, excited, glad, I'm fulfilled, plus the tone of the voice. Negative signals will include we, not because that's a negative word, but it simply tells you that the candidate may not be referring only to the self, only to his or her experience, but it is the experience of the team. Okay, watch out also for words like probably, perhaps, could be, because there is a level of uncertainty. Evaluation, given these guidelines, will still be challenging because, number one, if evaluation is an inherently subjective process, we all strive for objectivity. We have our natural biases, and we just have to remind ourselves, wait, Judy, you're being biased. Go back to that star question. Go back to the benchmark response. These are the things that will check our biases and our tendency to be subjective. Well, of course, having multiple interviewers will also address that subjectivity. The qualities that you see in the candidate in front of you will not be the real qualities. Of course, the candidate is projecting the best, or the candidate is also anxious. Third, watch out for patterns. Whether that's a response, that's the body language, that's the tone of the voice, watch out for patterns, because that is where you see the consistency of the candidate. And the last one is, do not focus only on the smile or the handshake or the way the candidate sits, but you look at the whole person, from the response, the body language, coupled with the different results of the assessment tools. So evaluation is rating and scoring each competency. You know what? Again, in a structured interview, you have there the trait, of course, the position, the trait. For the trait, the corresponding behavioral question or questions. I would advise that you have several questions, and then you will have the benchmark response. You are going to see also the rating, right? Both quantitative and qualitative. You want to determine the best match between the rating scale and the behavioral observation. So let's just say, because this is dependent on what you use now, right? You may have rating from 1 to 4, 4 being highest. You may have 1 to 7, 1 to 5, right? So you have your own rating scale. Now, what are you going to do? It will be good that you also have qualitative rating. For example, consistently demonstrates, frequently demonstrates, rarely demonstrates, never demonstrates the behavioral trait, or exceeds expectation, meets expectation, below expectations, doesn't meet expectations, right? You have the qualitative equivalent, because that will help the interviewers visualize what is for, what is one. And don't forget your narrative assessment. These are your notes. They're very important, your notes. That's why I always say, hey, after the interview, before you call on the next candidate, it is best that you fill out your rating, evaluation, or assessment form. You check out all your notes, because sometimes what happens is that it's our own handwriting, but sometimes we cannot read because we cannot understand our own handwriting. So better review what you have in your notes before you forget them. And after that, then it is time for you to come up with your evaluation, your rating. Do not do it while you're conducting the interviews. Well, some, they have flash impressions. When we say flash impressions, plus, negative, or plus, delta, you can have that. And of course, one thing that you need to remember is it will be helpful if you have benchmark answers and the equivalent rating. Again, tough job, but it's something that can be done little by little. I always tell HR, it's a work in progress. The question given is star, and notice that there are 4 responses. The highest, a 4, shows that a candidate engages in active listening to understand the side of the other person before giving the reasons. So for that position, for that particular trait, what is rated highly is the listening. And you can see all the rest of the benchmark answers. Of course, disagreeing with the employee is lowest. Is it a perfect approach, this behavioral interview? It's not. It's not. That's why I will present to you the caveats when you assess based on past behavior. You have to watch out for 3. One is, how close is the present situation or the future situation when it's hired to the past situation? How close? Meaning that you're looking for a salesperson. In the past, he described how he handled clients when selling tools in the retail business. All right, now what are you hiring for? You're hiring a salesperson who will sell services, tools and services. All right, wait, there's the experience. He was able to sell, but look at the relevance of that past situation to the present or future situation. Look at the time period, because when the candidate described something that happened 10 years ago, that's not recent. The candidate has already evolved. The candidate has changed. There is emotional maturity, as we call it. There is disposition that has changed through the years, right? Watch out for this, because no matter how good your questions are, no matter, even if you have your structure and your benchmark responses, you have to look into this. In other words, Ask yourselves 4 questions. Is the behavior relevant to the job? Do the results show that the behavior is significant? Remember, the star includes a question on results. That's why you ask that to probe. Third question, is the behavior recent? And may I add, does the candidate demonstrate the behavior consistent? Given this, you're on your toes. Yes, you're comfortable, you're confident that you have the right questions. What matters is how you assess. 5 simple steps. They tell you there's so much to do. There may be something in place, and if this is already in place, use this, your light bulb moments, in order for you to revisit and share what you have learned. And of course, last thing I'd like to hear from everyone, what will be your next step? What are you going to do after our learning session? Can you type that in chat? Just one. What is the first next thing that you're going to do? Most probably, if your key learning is the star question, you're going to work on star questions, huh? Well, it doesn't mean that you will ditch all the questions that you have. Remember, you make sure that you have star questions or behavioral questions. And when you ask the other questions, know the reason. Why am I asking the question? Tell me about yourself. You cannot use that to evaluate if the candidate is the right fit. But you can gather information. You can validate what you see in the resume. So let me see. Follow the star. Identify the competencies. Yes. All right. Take time to absorb. You know what? You can even share this with, especially HR people will share this with the line managers, the hiring managers, because managers are responsible for hiring people, and they should know how to do it right. So do this for them. Share with them what you have learned. Give them some guidelines so that they will be on the same page as you. Right, work hand in hand with our HR and co-managers. Do that. It will not be easy. It will take time. I tell you, with this company, the crewing company, they were able to really polish their structured interview after 2 years. I revisited them on the 3rd year, and they were able to even refine, add more positions, and they were able to train hiring managers. You know, these are captains of ships who retired, and they wanted to be involved in hiring ship captains, ratings, as well as chief engineers. So it's time for you to take that action. Thank you. I'd like to turn over to Miss Kate.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jeline. Okay, now we are opening the floor to questions. For those of you who might have questions, you can click the raise hand button so you can ask your question directly to our speaker, or type your questions here in the chat box. If they are a bit sensitive, you can send it to me privately, and then when I read your question, I won't be reading your names. Okay, so let us see. The questions that you will be asking are free of charge. Don't worry. So just keep your questions coming. I know our speaker would love to answer them. Okay, here's our first question, Miss Jeline. This is from Jolene Pancho. How do you establish rapport with your interviewee?
Mhm. Rapport building techniques will include one, greeting, really very sincere greeting, a small talk, not too long, being concerned with a candidate who, let us say, walked for a mile just to get to your office, or the traffic, concern, a handshake now that it is allowed, a smile, and of course, you need to make the candidate sit. Avoid a sitting arrangement wherein you are directly in front of the person. It will be good to have a round table where you can be more relaxed and the candidate be more relaxed. Gone are the days of looking strict and sounding strict. Gone are those days, because we always say that when a candidate is anxious, this candidate will be so conscious and so watchful of what to say. Remember, we want to get honest and sincere information.
Thank you so much for that answer, Miss Jeline. We have another question here. This time it's from Emmanuel. Do you have a special approach or advice for hiring PWDs?
Mm-hmm. When you say approach, meaning in interviews, because
I think that's it.
If, let us say, one, let me just backtrack. It is good that a company has opportunities for PWDs. And therefore, when we conduct interviews, when we are interacting with them, treat them just like anyone else. All these techniques that you can use will apply to them. The rapport building, the kinds of questions that we ask, some of them will be conscious. So you find a way for you to be able to make them feel more relaxed and welcome. That can be part of your small talk. And make sure also that you describe the company's culture in order for the candidate to see, indeed, this is a place that will be accepting and welcoming for me. Well, this may not be a job interview, but I just want to share with you something that happened to me in the past. I remember visiting a client. The contact person was an HR manager, and when we were talking, it was the HR manager who said to me, Jeline, if you feel uncomfortable establishing eye contact with me, will you look at my right eye? Because my left eye is blind. He was a victim of one of the bombings somewhere. So I did that. It was so helpful. I was not sure if he noticed that I was uncomfortable when I was talking to him, because I could not determine where to look at. But he was very helpful.
Thank you for that. Okay, another question, and this time I think somehow connected, but it's not about PWDs. This is the question from Janelle. How to call or address applicants that are a member of LGBTQ+.
How
do we address them?
Oh yes, ask. Rather than having a boo-boo, right?
Rather than assuming, yeah.
Should I address you? Let us say, shall I call you by your first name? Is it okay with you if I call you by your first name? Or start by saying, call me Jeline. I'd like to be very informal with the interview. Shall I call you by this name? I would ask.
Thank you for that. Okay. Next question. We're down to our last two questions, Ms. Janine, because of time constraint. But here is another question. It was sent to me privately. Here's a question. Do you believe in first impressions last? If yes, why? Or if no, what is your opinion for those romanticizing this idea?
Well, I would say first impressions linger. Well, first impressions may not last, but they linger. And they're there in back of my mind. And I'm trying to, let us say, assess either the situation or the person in that situation. It is, as I've described, a natural reaction. But in my job and even as a trainer, I really have to avoid being affected, being influenced by first impressions.
Thank you. And this is our last question. The question is, can you share with us things that we need to consider when hiring a candidate with no experience?
First, why will you hire a candidate with no experience? Is the job something that can be done with no experience? Well, of course, if it is a job entry level, yes, because why? These will mean fresh graduates, right? They don't have the work experience, but there may be experiences when they were in school, when they had their extracurricular activities, their on-the-job experiences, wherein you could still determine the behavioral traits that you are looking for. Without the experience, then that means you are looking not for the technical competency, you are looking for the attitude, you are looking for the trait, and you have that belief that you can train this person as long as this person has the right attitude. And hiring by using the behavioral interview will help determine if the candidate has that attitude.
Thank you so much for all of your answers. I know we still have a lot of questions, but we don't have enough time. But really, thank you so much, Ms. Julie. Because of that, we'd like to present you with a certificate. So let me show this and let me read it. Ariva Academy Learning Development at its finest gratefully presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Jeline Santa Maria for imparting her professional expertise, valuable insights, knowledge, and wisdom as a resource speaker during the conduct of online learning session entitled Behavioral-Based Interviewing Skills. Hire the right people with the right skills for the right position. Given this first day of June 2023 via Zoom conference, signed by Chairman and Chief Strategist, Learning Event Producer J.M. Matienzo, and President and Chief Learning and Development Strategist, Michelle Irish Malonda Samson. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for our speaker, Ms. Jeline Santa Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all the learnings that we got from you. And based on what I'm seeing in the chat box and also via our live streams, a lot of them are saying thank you. They really learned a lot. We are looking forward to having you again with us, Ms. Jeline. Thank you so much for that. Now, before we call it a day, let us have a group photo with our participants. So everyone, if your cameras are still turned off, please turn them on. Join us in this group photo. There you go. Turn them on. And let me call on the assistance of our technical director, Direct Jello. Can you help us out, please?
Thank you so much, Miss Kate. Now I would like to ask everyone to please kindly turn on your cameras for 2 shots of group photo. Are you guys ready? For our first shot, just give me your biggest smiles. Show me your biggest smiles, everyone. Ready, guys? In 3, 2, 1. And now for a second shot, just give me a finger heart. 2 finger hearts, everyone.
2 finger hearts. Okay.
Ready, guys? In 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Back to you, Miss Kate.
Thank you so much, Direct Jello. In behalf of everyone from Ariva Academy, I would like to say thank you to all of our participants for being with us on this tremendous Thursday afternoon. We really had fun and learned a lot from our speakers and also from all of our participants based on the answers that we're seeing here in the chat box. You have all been very interactive. So thank you. And we are looking forward to welcoming you again in our future learning events. Thank you, everyone. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.